This is Swarfcast. I'm Noah Graff. I'm very honored to have Ann Wyatt, president and founder of Ann Wyatt Recruiting in Athens, Alabama. Also, the host of the live stream show Workforce 4.0. Welcome to the show, Ann.
Oh, thank you. No, it's so great to be here. I appreciate you having me on.
This is great. I ran into Ann on LinkedIn where I'm trying to become active, and she's a real pro. We'll touch on that in the interview. And when I saw her, I was like, totally need to interview her. We're going to be talking about workforce development today. And this is something we've talked about a lot before. How do people find good people? This is, one of the main things I hear about all the time as a machinery dealer. Oh, I'd buy a machine if I had somebody to run it. So this is just something that's on everybody's mind, and I can't wait to see what she's got to say about it. First, I'm just going to get a quick overview of your company, and then I want to get a little bit about you, and then we'll go into a little more detail. So what's the really quick summary of Ann Wyatt Recruiting?
Yeah, absolutely, Noah. So I started my company back in 2015 when I really saw an influx of greenfield companies come into the Bowling Green, Kentucky area. And I just kind of decided, we really were going to have to get a good foundational local
What
recruiter. And I
what kind of
approached
companies? Green what?
Greenfield sites. So industrial sites that were not pre-existing, which is what you would think of when you think of like a brownfield site.
I've never even
That's
heard that term before.
Yeah, it's basically a startup company for manufacturing plants. And it's basically because they start as a green field, right? And then everything's built ground up.
And obviously, it's going to be even harder to find employees when there's nothing established, I think. And you're just starting from square one.
Well, the issue that we were really facing at that time was that the unemployment rate was already dropping so dramatically.
This is
And
2015.
this is 2015. Yeah. So
Okay.
we were down to a 4% or so unemployment rate. And we had existing sites in the area. And to me, it just made sense to start to look outside of the local area for talent instead of, the existing companies trying to compete with the greenfield sites because you wanted to build a sustainable workforce, right? That
Right.
was the whole goal. Yeah.
Okay. Let's take it way back now. I want to know, give me like the 3 to 5 minute bio, um, how you got into the recruiting racket.
Sure. Absolutely. So that's a good question. So, like I said, I started my company Ann Wyatt Recruiting in 2015. Previous to that point, I was working for the state of Kentucky in workforce development as a workforce development specialist too. And so in that capacity, I was doing some recruiting. I was doing a lot of employment placement and employment services with people, job searching, all that kind of stuff, job fairs. So like event organization.
And this was your first job right out of college. This was your first job.
Yes.
How did give me the story on that, because it's pretty interesting.
It's a good story. It's one of my favorite stories to tell everybody because I feel like that was kind of a point in my life that, I just graduated college from Western Kentucky University. And I was a broke college kid. I didn't have internet in my house that I was renting. So my mom says to me, I was looking for a job, it was like 2010,
You didn't
if
have
anybody,
internet in your house?
I mean, I was
Okay.
a broke
Anyways, no.
college kid. I ate a lot of ramen. Uh,
Okay. So you didn't
That's
have any
right.
internet in your house. You were eating ramen and you told your mom.
I was like, I don't, it's kind of hard to find a job right now. Again, I mean, this is like 2010, So she suggested that I go down to the unemployment office, that I could use their internet for free and look for a job. And that's just like what they did there. And I was like, okay. So I started going to the career center every day and searching for a job. And one day I went in there, and the receptionist at the front desk was, she said, "Hey, I'm leaving. Do you want my job?"
So you hadn't found a good job yet.
I hadn't found a good job. No. This was probably like a month. It's probably like a month from when I started going. So,
Okay.
yeah. And I looked at her and I was like, "Really?" And she said, "Yeah."
Because you were
And
helping other people there that were trying to find jobs.
I was, yeah, they had a nice self-service area up front, and I didn't really need a lot of hands-on help. Once you're registered in the system, you can use their website to navigate your job search, and they have, all their jobs on there, and you can apply, electronically. So a lot of the individuals that were coming into the office, they were opting to do the self-service, but then they may have a question on the application forms. And so they, for whatever reason, just kind of latched on to me, and were like, they just saw me and they were like, "Hey,
Did they think that you
can you
worked
help
there
me?"
because you were there all the time already,
May Maybe. I don't know. No,
or
I
did they
don't
just
think, I
look at
think they
you and they were like,
knew.
she's young, she knows how to use the internet? Like,
I think it was more of, she's young, she knows how to use the internet type of thing. So I would help them out with their questions and stuff. And so yeah. So the front desk receptionist was basically like, "Yeah, you look nice, you're really helpful with the other people that come in and use the self-service area." And then she looked at me and said, "And you're here every day anyway."
well, were you just helping them navigate the internet and fill out the applications, or were you like sort of, getting into them a little bit personal and they were talking to you about the things they were trying to do and you were learning about their stories? Was it more in depth, or was it at that point just kind of like, yeah, I know the internet and I can help you fill this out?
Yeah, that's a great question, Noah, and I really appreciate you asking me that. I think you're the first person that's asked me that. So, but it kind of shines the light on some of the other people that were in the office, and also, like really kind of, because we did have regulars. And so some of them were not regulars. So it wasn't as, I didn't have a chance to really develop those relationships. But there was one regular that was usually in there every day, with me during the same time. Now, he wasn't really one that I had to help out as much. He was actually an engineer that had been let go of his job. But he was quite interesting to talk to, and we got to know each other a little bit, and we had some really good conversations. And he worked in a manufacturing plant. He was probably the first engineer that I spoke with during my time there
What were the other people doing?
at the career center.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah. What was the, so you're in Kentucky. I I haven't really been to Kentucky, really, and I don't, our country is just different everywhere and different, and even in different cities or whatever. What were these people there? What were they unemployed from? What were their jobs before that?
mm, that's a great question. Again,
And were they
yeah,
like, you're
so
weird, we're unemployed, we've worked before, and you're like out of college? That's sort of an interesting dynamic.
that was an interesting dynamic. But no, I think everybody was pretty understanding of that fact, because it was, even though the recession happened in '08, right? there was still some long-standing damage with that. I mean, when I first started at the Career Center, we were still doing 52 weeks of unemployment, if if that has any significance there. Normally, unemployment is only for 6 months.
Oh,
So that was back when we had a federal extension and we had a state funded extension. And a lot of the positions that we had in Bowling Green, Kentucky were manufacturing jobs. And a lot of them subsequently were in automotive. So we were really hit hard during the '08
so this
recession.
was your first sort of entree into the manufacturing world.
Yes. And to get back to your original point of what Ann Wyatt Recruiting does is,
Yes,
I work with manufacturing companies to find them engineering and technical talent for their hard to find job openings. And this was
exactly.
probably one of the first encounters I'd had with somebody that worked professionally in this space as an engineer.
Yeah, no, this is what got it all started.
Exactly.
Um, okay, so you're working there, and what happened after that? How long were you there? You decided to take over working the front desk. I'm sure you were doing it. It sounds like you were doing a lot more than your predecessor was. Because at this point, you're doing more than just helping people with the computers. You were assuming this role of I don't know. Give me more detail because it's really interesting.
Let me give you the timeline rundown if that's okay.
Yeah, that's what I want. Yeah.
Okay. So I was brought on as a temp to work the front desk. Shortly thereafter, and that was probably in August, and then shortly thereafter, I was offered a role as a federally funded, time limited workforce development specialist one, which is basically a long way of saying a temp through the state. So where I wouldn't be, paid through a third party contracting agency, it would be directly through the state.
Okay.
Um, I was brought on in that capacity. And at that point, I was moved from the front desk to an actual workforce development specialist role, where I concentrated on employment services. And then I did handle a little bit of unemployment insurance in that capacity. Um, but mostly it was employment services, job matching, resume writing, interview prep, that kind of thing.
And were you teaching that stuff to yourself or I mean,
That's a great question. I learned a lot from my employers. I'm going to say I learned more about resume writing from my employers in in how they would respond to submissions and
which
job matching.
employers?
I had a really good relationship with the manufacturing companies that were local.
Oh, the employers you were working with. I got you.
Yeah.
I thought you were saying like your own personal previous employers, and I was like, okay.
No. No, so they had a really strong local chapter of the Society of Human Resource Managers, also known as SHRM. And as our office started to shift more to employment services from unemployment insurance, they thought that it would be a good idea for us to start getting more involved in SHRM. So I was able to be lucky enough to be able to go to some of the SHRM meetings, and that kind of started that whole relationship that I started to develop with the local area manufacturing companies. They were big participants of SHRM, and they taught me so much, that cohort.
Right. You learned from the potential employers what they wanted and how they worked, basically.
Exactly.
And then you were able to go back to the people that were looking for employment and translated it. So that makes total sense.
Coach them. Yes.
So then you worked there a while, you really got into it. Then you when did you shift your career and go off on your own? Or am I skipping something important in the middle?
Um, no. So in 2015, there was just such a high demand for talent already. And with the rate that they were announcing greenfield sites to the area, it was just kind of like a peripheral vision thing. I was like, oh, well,
And why Kentucky, where there are all these greenfield sites?
yeah, it's a great question. So every state has an economic development plan and different agencies that facilitate that plan. And it takes, I mean, this is a pretty big network. It's pretty extensive and it depends on each state. And I don't think that it was necessarily Kentucky. I mean, I think that Tennessee really benefited a lot from those years. I think they're still seeing some growth. I know Kentucky is still seeing
Is
some
this
growth.
because of all the like automotive assembly down there?
I mean, automotive, and then there's also some different industries that were coming to the area that required a different skill set than what we would have normally had
Mm-hmm.
in the local area, if that makes sense.
Sure. So
Um,
yeah.
so yeah, so anyway, all of these agencies kind of work together with conjunction of the federal agencies like your DOL,
What's the DOL?
Department of Labor,
Ah, okay.
and they kind of drive the mission and scope of the industrial projects through these agencies, through the state directly, through your economic development partners.
All right. So you've started getting relationships with these companies. It's the place is booming because of the greenfield sites. You knowing your stuff now, and then that's what made you go, all right, I can go off on my own. Is that how it happened?
I was basically like really concerned about the sustainability of the workforce because what you did not want to do is you didn't want to increase any kind of competition between your local area employers that were existing. And you didn't want to kind of foster this environment where it was really competitive with the job seeker that side either. For example, that's like saying, okay, well, you have um, 10 machinists currently working at your company, and then another machining company comes up in and sets shop right up next to you, right? And then five of your best machinists from your 10 go to this other company. So it kind of like doesn't make it a very sustainable environment. Does that make sense?
If they're all popping up like that, sort of unregulated.
So my thought was, maybe we should really think about having a recruiter try to help with finding pockets that were in scope of the local area that maybe had not had the economic boom that we had had, and then try to target those areas.
Interesting.
So for example, so I'll tell you when I've had when I've done some, and to this day when I still do work for some of my clients up there, I will run my scope of range all the way down into Tennessee to look for uh, candidates because then they're still somewhat commutable. I mean, unless the company wants to relocate, which then I'll pull different areas that have that specific industry. Does that make sense?
You're trying to spread it out a little bit so you're not having everybody just fighting over the same talent.
Exactly.
And you're helping do that because you have the contacts in different places.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So I approached, some of them again are still clients to this day. I approached them and I say, I think we need a recruiter. And they looked at me and they were like, yeah, that's a good idea. I don't think there's many people doing that. They just looked at me.
And you told me in our previous conversation that because one thing I wondered, why manufacturing? I mean, I guess you started getting in contact with these people during your time at the unemployment agency because it was a lot of these people. But is there something about manufacturing that really, got you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's really, to me, when I'm looking at, because I had access to wage records as part of the unemployment piece of it, right? And then when you're matching people to jobs, you have to make sure that it's comparable salary and all of that. So, when I'm pulling the wage records of individuals that are in manufacturing and, me sitting across the desk with my 4-year fancy degree, um, and I'm pulling these wage records, and some of these individuals, they have a high school diploma or they have a GED and they're making six figures.
Yeah.
And I'm over here like,
Or they were making six figures before they were unemployed.
I'm probably making six figures right now for sure in this market. Um, yeah, that's a pretty powerful statement
Yeah.
on its own. And then, in comparison to other industries, it wasn't as comparable or as high. Um, and I'm over here thinking they told me to go to school for what? You know. So that had a big piece of it. I really thought
I
that
mean, it's not all about salary. I mean, if it really was, you'd go into manufacturing. I mean, you wouldn't want to work at a shop, would you? That's not the way your brain works, is it? Or not?
I mean, it's not all about the salary, but at the end of the day, it is a very sustainable industry to be in, meaning that it is not only sustainable from the economic development point of it, right? As far as like creating jobs, developing your different trans parks and all of that, that's in a way, it's almost like it's an automatic upgrade because you're getting, all of the facilities that run with it, right? You're getting the wastewater, you're getting the electrical grid, you're getting the fiber optics, right? But on the other spectrum of that, from the individual perspective, that's a pretty high ROI. And then, it drives your other capacities of your economic development because then those individuals are going out and they're putting their money back into the economy.
So it sounds like what the wages intrigued you, but then the whole purpose of what it does for our country and society and the economy is what gives you purpose and what you find the most interesting.
Yeah, and there's definitely a lot of independence in manufacturing, right? Making your own product. Yeah.
Um, what do you mean?
I mean that, instead of relying on a global market, not that that's always a bad thing, but I mean, it certainly helped us with, all the supply chain and all that, right?
I
That
see.
we do have a large manufacturing sector here.
Yeah, it's vital.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, now you have your own company and you you're living in Alabama. You're no longer living in Kentucky. Why did you move to Alabama?
Yeah, it's another good question, Noah. So my family all started migrating down to Alabama, and I had my son who's now 6. And I decided, you know what, I see what all the fuss is about. I need a little bit of help. So I got on the train, on the on the moving south train, and here I am.
Why did they want to leave Kentucky and go to Alabama? I really don't know much about it.
Well, it's kind of an interesting story. I don't know that it's something, that your audience is gonna appreciate. But
We can always edit it out if we need to.
yeah, it's fine.
I have a feeling it's going to be pretty interesting. So please continue.
So my sister-in-law's mother started this whole whole migration here. And this was back before my sister-in-law and my brother uh, knew each other. But, her mom moved down here. She had met a fella, moved down here. They got married.
Where in Alabama are you?
In Athens, it's right outside of Huntsville.
Athens. I already said that in the introduction, but I couldn't remember. Okay, near Huntsville. Okay, go on.
And so, yeah, she had moved down here, and that's how I met Taryn. And I like to tell everybody she was my friend first because she was. Um, but I had met Taryn because she was looking for a place to rent, and we had kind of an apartment in our backyard, in our house that we grew up in, my brother and I. Um, and she just knocked on the door one day and was asking about the apartment. And so we ended up renting the apartment to her, and that's how Chip and Taryn met, my brother and my sister-in-law. And then once Taryn started having, my nephews, she decided that she wanted to be closer to her mom,
Got you.
so that her mom could help her with the boys. So then they moved to Athens, Alabama. And then my mother, she decided that she wanted to be closer to her grandchildren. So then she moved to Athens, Alabama. And then, yeah, and then when Phoenix came along, and after my father passed away, who lived in Louisville, Kentucky.
Phoenix is a cool
After,
name.
oh, thank you.
Well done.
Yeah, thank you. Um, I decided, I could really use some help. And so then I moved to Athens, Alabama.
And and you were where in Kentucky? Bowling Green?
Bowling Green.
Okay. I don't really know that much about either one of them. I just know that there's a Bowling Green in lots of different states, and there's an Athens in different states.
Absolutely.
Are they similar places to live? Are they, what's it like?
Yes and no.
And
I
they
don't
both have a
know.
lot of manufacturing, I assume.
They both have a lot of manufacturing. Huntsville has a lot of DoD aerospace. That's
Yes.
cool. Everybody is very space crazy over there. It's really fun. Rocket City.
Yeah, that's the only thing when I heard Huntsville, I was like, oh, that's where all the space camps are.
Yeah, NASA uh, has their space camp there, and there's space and rocket centers over there. It's really cool. Phoenix loves it. Um, but it's fun.
Okay, so now I want to get a little bit more into how the recruiting business works. Um, you more or less are a matchmaker, a yenta of sorts for jobs, correct?
I love that. Yes.
You can, I don't know if you've used that before, but you can keep that if you'd like.
I might keep that.
Put it
Yeah.
on your website. That's fine. Um,
Jobs Yenta.
yeah. Um, okay. So the way you're able to do this is that you have a good network. Um, and your good network has come from just years of experience and one company meeting another company. I guess that's basically how your network is. It's kind of it's been organic.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Um, of course, I knew a lot of people at the career center from being there, you know, but when I left there, I didn't have I couldn't just take my database with everybody, with everybody in it. So I had to rebuild a lot of my candidate network.
Oh, okay. I was figuring that you just had all these contacts and just call them up on the phone but I'm sure that was a jump off point to certain things.
It was. So, just getting to know people and just starting to learning how to ask for referrals in a receptive way and all that good stuff.
Right. Um, so I just want to understand kind of how it works. So say you are somebody who wanted to become a recruiter in your field, um, maybe they have experience like you. How do you break in? I mean, are you like doing cold calls with various manufacturing companies and you're just like, hey, I'm Ann Wyatt. This is what I do. Are you guys
Yeah.
looking for employees?
Cold calling is a very traditional way and part of the recruiting process. And I don't imagine that cold calling, you know, that a piece of that will always stay, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess now that you have a reputation, people who are looking for jobs come to you. I'm trying to understand how it all works.
Absolutely. Yeah. So there's two pieces, right, of the two doors that you can go through here. You can go through from the job seeker candidate perspective, or you can go through from the employer perspective. Um, these are generally um, the process is generally a little different for each of them.
So how are you? Yeah, I mean, how are you linking up with them? Is it that people are finding you on the web and or it's just kind of word of mouth?
A lot of it is through LinkedIn, and a lot of it is through different online communities. That's a huge thing. I mean, you mentioned LinkedIn earlier, and there's just such an awesome manufacturing community on LinkedIn. It is so cool. When I
Yeah.
first got on LinkedIn, it was a ghost town. It was not anything like this. And I've been on LinkedIn for a long time, since I was at the state. So it's just really cool to see it grow into what it is.
I I've been trying to build this podcast a little bit more seriously. I mean, I wanted to build it before, but I'm trying to, it sounds very self-interested and whatever, but I mean, I know that to build it, I have to go to LinkedIn, or other social media, but it seems like LinkedIn is the place where it's at for manufacturing. And then I just see yours, and yours is, I mean, you know what you're doing. Do you have any pointers? A couple pointers for LinkedIn, say you're looking for a job, um and you're on LinkedIn, and then maybe start with, though, like, you want to have a strong presence on LinkedIn and like yourself.
Yeah.
What can I what teach me? Tell me what I can do to be intelligent, to get
Teach you my ways.
yeah.
Okay. I can give you a few tips of what I've done that's helped
Yeah.
me. And that's I don't think is I don't think there's a wrong way though. In all defense, I don't think there's a wrong way.
I think there's a wrong way.
You think there's a wrong way? Well,
Yeah.
the wrong way is to like promote yourself and be super pushy and like salesy and pitch everybody in your DMs. That's the wrong way. Don't do that.
Well, I was just going to say the wrong way is where it doesn't work.
Oh,
where
well,
where nobody sees you, where, I mean, what you just said, that's definitely the wrong way, and maybe that's even worse. But the wrong way is just where you're spinning your wheels. So tell me, give me a few pointers, give everybody a few pointers if you want to have a presence on LinkedIn.
absolutely. If you want to have a presence on LinkedIn, um, just start making content. And I'll even suggest, so this is a big tip that I give my jobs, like my candidates, when they reach out to me and they're like, how can I promote myself on LinkedIn? Like, how do I get noticed by recruiters on LinkedIn? You can just certainly optimize your profile for SEO. You can certainly do that. That's a very popular tip. But I am more interested in sustainability as a recruiter. That is what got me into recruiting. That is why I love to do it today.
Okay.
That's why I'm advocating for workforce development. My end goal is to keep the sector sustainable. So when I'm talking about sustainability, I'm thinking about community. right? So, as a job seeker or as a candidate, if you want to be noticed by employers that are essentially in your niche, you know, create some samples, if you will, of your work. And you can say, well, Ann, I work with my hands. I do a lot of like say you're like a PLC programmer.
Okay.
It's a challenge to make content around. But at the same time, if you're out in the field working, and I'll tell you, Ali G does this, she does a great job of it. She just
I
snaps a
thought you
pic.
just said Ali G, and I was like, I love Ali G.
Ali G, Alicia Gilpin.
I know, I know, but it sounded
Okay.
like you said Ali G.
Oh, I'm sorry. No,
Okay.
Ali G, Alicia Gilpin. And who, if you're on LinkedIn, you've seen her, but she'll just snap a pic and post it and then talk about a little bit about it.
Of something they've made.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then another thing that you want to do, besides create content, is you want to comment on other people's content and, really try to read the comments, because LinkedIn is so great for that. It's a very, I don't want to say that it's like filtered, but I think that there's a level of accountability when people are posting. By and large, it's not like being on another platform where it's just like word vomit. Usually what is being posted is applicable, it's useful, it's thoughtful, it's been thought through, it's helpful, it's positive,
And
that kind
you're
of stuff.
saying LinkedIn's algorithm is trying to figure that out, and that's the stuff that gets visible if it's got substance.
If it's got substance. Exactly. Exactly. So comment and engage with other professionals that are in your industry sector and invite them to connect with you. And then once you invite them, or when you invite them, make sure you include a message and just say, hey, my name is Ann Wyatt, and I'm just reaching out. I thought we had some similar interests. I see that you're into Industry 4.0. I'm in Industry 4.0. Like, let's connect.
What if you're, you're kind of starting from scratch, and you are trying to build a following, and you get sent a bunch of people that might be interesting, and you kind of go down the list and try to connect with all of them. Is that stupid? Is that trying to game the system, or
No, I mean, it just depends on what your end goal is. For the average person, I would say be very careful with who you connect with.
why?
I would say, I just think, I think it's better.
People in China, people in
I mean, just you want to keep it to your industry, because it's going to promote, you see what I mean? The algorithm is going to promote people that are in your industry if your connection base is strong in that industry. And it makes it easier to sort information, and it makes it easier to really get to know people. And it gives you a lot more potential to carry the connection offline. And I've really, been fortunate to meet a lot of my connections that I've made on LinkedIn. And I mean, I would call them friends. They're my friends,
That's amazing. Well, I
you
mean, look
know?
at this.
Yeah.
This is what we're doing now.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah.
So, okay, so that's one piece of advice you would give if somebody is a candidate or an employer. Show why you're interesting on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. And when you go to DM them, my
So
first advice would
for people that aren't hip to it, DM is direct message. Just
direct message.
send a message.
Absolutely. When you go to message them, when you connect with them, you know, I know that it's easy to be like, listen, I'm looking for a job, but I think that's the wrong approach. I think what you should do in lieu of doing that is just reach out and find that similarity, and find that, that alignment, that you both share that common ground, and build that relationship first, build that networking first, and then after a couple of interactions, that's the point you could probably say, hey, I'm in the market or whatever.
Interesting. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know. I wonder in this job market though, if you had a nice little profile on there and you went up
Mm-hmm.
to the right person and you just flat out said, I'm looking for a job, maybe it's not a crazy idea.
I mean, it's not. I mean, it's not a crazy idea.
But you think it's a little better, maybe a little less needy, maybe
I
a little smoother to just say, hey, look, you know,
I would after a few interactions
don't do it on when you're trying to connect with
because
them.
you could easily accomplish the same goal here if you were to go to their website and put in an application, right?
I don't know. Maybe not.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's almost like the same type of interaction, right? Only this time you're like bringing it to their front door. If you message them in a way as like I'm looking for a job and that's like your first conversation that you have, then my reaction is going to be like, well, why don't they go to my website, put in an application or submit a resume? I mean, there's channels for this, right? But what's lacking is that relationship that says, oh yeah, I know, you know.
Well, would it be better? Wouldn't it be better for them to just go to you rather than go to a website where you're just who knows who?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It kind of works the same way, right? That same interaction, networking piece of it.
So if there was, somebody with quite the resume who's an engineer or, somebody, ex management at a company and they saw you and they just said, hey, Ann, I'd love to talk to you. I'm looking for a job. That's too direct. You wouldn't want that. You'd want them to first kind of connect with you and have a conversation with you.
I mean, that's my job to to place people. So I don't take that personally, you
Yeah,
know.
that's what I'm
Um,
saying. To me, it would make
but
sense.
if you're if you're the vice president of a company,
Yes.
okay, and somebody is randomly DMing their CV to you,
Oh, yeah.
see what I'm saying?
I got
Even
you.
if you're like a human resources director, I mean, at that level, it's kind of like I don't really handle a lot of the recruiting. This might not be the right channel.
Right. But you would be.
See what I mean? I would be, yeah. And I have people do that quite often. I don't ever take offense to it. I usually thank them for sending it and then, try to match them.
Who pays you? The job applicant or the company?
The company.
That's what I figured.
Hmm.
Um, to me, the idea of filling out a job application online at a company, I would just think that would feel like you're just going to be lost in a big pile of them. Do you think that's true?
Depends. I mean, it depends on what their applicant tracking system looks like. It depends on what filters they have set up. I mean, there's a lot of factors there. It depends on if they're if they have the recruitment staff to, keep on top of that, or, it depends on the levels of automation set up through their process. I mean, there's a lot of different variables there that could affect your ability to get noticed online with an application.
Yeah. And
Just depends.
what I've heard is that you can be discriminated against if you have a name that's weird and it's hard to pronounce.
With the ATS.
I mean, just if you're applying for a job, because when they're looking through resumes, they will just pass you over because they're like, I don't even know how to pronounce his name or her name. You've heard that before, right?
Um,
Maybe you haven't.
Yeah, I don't know. That's not usually the common thing. The common thing is usually like the experience that is listed on the resume. To me, I hear that more.
Okay.
Like, so then the filters are set up in such a way that it's looking for, very specific experience. So then you know, the ATS will put it in it's essentially like a spam folder, but it's there, but you have to go look for it.
What do you think of interviews? I think that interviews are way overrated.
Do you? I don't
I
know. It
do. I
depends on the
do. Well,
interview.
plus what I've read and I was we did this interview with this guy Brian Balasia. I think you knew of him.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Brian's great.
Yeah, his whole thing is just trying to basically redo the whole job placement thing, finding the right job, finding the right place for people where they're going to succeed, and um, he thinks they're a waste of time. I've in the this book, this Malcolm Gladwell book, Talking to Strangers, this idea where you talk to somebody, they can seem very trustworthy, they can seem great, and then they're full of crap because they give a great interview. Um,
I don't know. I think that it depends on the information that you're trying to assess from the interview and the technique you're using to interview. That can certainly be the case. And I've seen that. But I've also seen interviews carried out very successfully. It just depends. Depends on who's doing the interview. It depends on the questions, like I said, and it depends on what information you're trying to ascertain. Because I do interviews all the time. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions about the interview is that when I'm interviewing, I'm looking at surface level. Now, I am only looking at what your answers. I am looking at that, but I'm also looking at kind of what's not being said or why you did something a certain way instead of doing it the other way. I mean, it doesn't matter really at the end of the day. But what matters really is kind of different things like, motivating factors or did you take action when you should have taken action? Was it appropriate action that you took? Or, was there what, sometimes I'm looking at like accountability.
how are you looking at accountability in an interview?
I mean, it just depends. Again, it depends on the question. So, I mean, um, I don't know. Like right now, I'm doing a retention study, and one of the questions I think is really interesting because it's asking about if the person that is separated from the company, if they uh, went to management and try to convey any dissatisfaction with management. And really, that's a two-piece question. That's looking at the accountability of the person that was in the role to take the action and try to have and facilitate that discussion. And if they did, how did, what did they do and how did it, transpire and all that. And then you're looking at like the company response, right? So you're looking at how the company reacted to that person coming to them with um, with some dissatisfaction. So you know what I mean? So I wouldn't say that the interview is totally overrated. It just depends on your ability to understand or assess the information
Okay.
from the
Well,
questions.
well,
Or no, it
look,
depends on the questions. A lot of questions are more meaningful than other questions,
this is what you do. So I think that your opinion is, I really value it. I've just what I've read and heard from other people and experienced a little bit myself. I think first impressions can be BS.
They can be.
And people put a lot of emphasis on it. Uh, if you read this book, this Malcolm Gladwell book about um, talking to strangers, where you meet people and people think that these CIA agents, they've been infiltrated with spies. They knew them for 10 years, and they turn out they had no idea who they were. they were spying. They did this study where, when somebody's going out on bail, uh, whether they're deciding whether they should be on bail or not, that they go in front of the judge, and the judge wants to look the person in the eye and decide, is this person trustworthy or not.
Hmm. That's hard to do. There's not a lot of metrics there.
Yeah, well, but what they found was that, somebody looked at the statistics and of who broke bail and who didn't, and then they made this AI system that predicted, just based on like demographics and rap sheet, and the AI system was way, way more accurate than any of these judges that looked at them and just thought, oh, this guy looks trustworthy, this guy doesn't look trustworthy. I know myself, I did a deal with somebody in Japan. Actually, it wasn't a Japanese guy, it was a guy from Taiwan, but he was in Japan. I spent several days with this guy and his wife even, and he stole hundreds of thousands of dollars from our company. And like, when you spend a long time with somebody and you have dinner with them, and I like to think that I could at least trust somebody. The point is, I've noticed in job interviews, when people we've interviewed, they seem awesome, and then they're not. And then some people just interview crap and they're really good. But it sounds like you have a lot of, personal experience with it. So, and all I have is some anecdotal evidence. So, it's just an interesting debate, and I'm sure you've heard it a lot before.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, it is interesting because it can be such, you know, misleading, right? You just have to be intentional in the questions that you're asking. You have to be,
So what
arm
questions
yourself
would
with people analytics,
what questions would you be asking? Say I'm an engineer, and I've worked at a few places and got a lot of qualifications for the jobs that you need. And I go in,
Okay.
on paper, I'm great. What are you going to ask me and what are you going to look at between the lines?
Sure. So I'm going to use one of my favorite behavioral interview questions to ask you, that I learned along the way here. So I'm going to say, no, that's amazing. Looks like you have great experience here. Can you tell me a time when you were asked to do something unsafe? Um, did you end up doing it? If so, what was the end result? And what were the steps that you took during the process?
So would you be looking at what they said, or would you be looking at a way they said it? Say I
Not so
said,
much.
say I said, yeah, I did do something unsafe one time. I really regret it.
What'd you do?
Really, it was really stupid. Uh, um, I was on the shop floor, and we didn't follow all the safety protocols, and uh, a machine crashed, and there was a fire in the machine. It could have been a really big deal. Would you go, all right, well, I appreciate this guy's honesty? Would you go, yeah, red flag, this guy did a stupid thing? I mean, what can you tell from that?
So did somebody ask you to do it? Or, what happened after the machine caught fire? What was the end result of all this?
The machine caught fire. Nobody got hurt. Um, this is one of the things that led to me losing my job.
And was this your own discretion, or did you approach management about it?
Yes, it was my own fault. There was something, we were in the middle of the production process. Management wanted to get parts done really quickly. This was coming at me, that was coming at me. And so I made this decision. It was a really poor decision.
Were you
Okay.
informed from management before, of the protocols that, in the event that something like this were to come up, were you informed by management, what to do? Did you know the steps to take other than what you did
I knew the steps to take.
beforehand?
I knew the
Good.
steps to take, but it was stress, a little brain fart, and poor judgment. Um, I mean,
Did
you're
you
as
learn anything? What did
absolutely.
you
I
learn?
learned. I learned not to cut corners. I learned to follow the right protocol because that's the most important thing. And just I also learned you just have to be vigilant. Once you think uh, that you can relax, that nothing's going to happen because it hasn't happened before, that's when things go wrong.
Hmm.
Let's take a step back. We're out of the role play here. You asking this question about when you failed and what happened. I mean, what do you expect somebody to say? They're either going to like confess that they were dumb, or they're going to and not show enough remorse or something, or they're going to say, I never did anything wrong. I have a clean
No.
record. Or they're going to say, I did do something stupid and it's not my fault. Or they're going to say, but there's really nothing they can say that's the right answer to that question.
It's not, but you're looking for integrity and you're looking for somebody that knows how to handle a situation that's by guidelines, right? So I don't know,
Right, but they'll just lie. Wouldn't they just lie? Wouldn't that be the right thing to do? To lie if they
I
screwed up?
mean, if you keep asking them in the way that you did, the way that I just asked you,
Mm-hmm.
I would expect you to give me more information than what you gave
Oh,
me.
I mean, we were just did this is off the cuff, I mean,
But see, but if they are not by proxy, then they're failing the interview. If they're not answering all of the questions, then by proxy, that's,
I think that's not a fair
on the
question to
interview.
ask somebody. That's a losing battle. They're either going to lie or they're going to say that they did something stupid, and then the employer is going to be like, "Well, I appreciate this guy's honesty, but this
Yeah.
isn't the kind of guy I want or woman." So that's my,
But
that
should that person have taken that action in the first place? And as an employer, would you hire that person?
well, that's what I'm saying. If they've done that, they're not going to say that anyways. So, like, how is the interview helping if they're just going to deny that they've done anything wrong?
But if they're not going to say it, then they're not going to be able to answer the rest of that question.
So if I say,
They're lying about it, they're not going to be able to answer the rest of that question.
if you ask me when was a blunder I made, and I say, really, I haven't done anything wrong, then what are you going to say after that?
Are you sure? There's nothing you want to share, or name a time when you've been asked to lie about something.
Oh, this is what they ask in interviews.
Sometimes in behavioral interviews, they're hard. They're hard interviews. Yeah, they're hard. I mean, there's a lot of science and psychology behind them, and
Yeah,
what you're saying, what you're not saying.
yeah. This is in my opinion, this is the kind of thing where somebody can be a great person and totally screw up and act like they're lying, and somebody could be a terrible person and just be really good
I
at.
do I do admit there's a lot of training that goes into this. This is, if you're going to be doing behavioral interviews, then you need to have a lot of training on how to do them and what you're looking for and all that kind of thing.
Okay, this is really interesting, but let me just go through a couple more scenarios. I'm just going off the top of my head. I know we've
This
going
is
going
fun
down a
though.
bunch of. It is fun. It
Are you
is.
having fun? Good. I'm having fun.
I am, but I mean, what you're telling me is the stuff that I feel like is proving my point that these quote unquote experts that think that they can um, understand who's lying and who's telling the truth, I think they're fooled. I think they really don't know what they're up against, and um,
Well, and you also want to get the references, call the references,
well, the references
do a
seem that
background check.
I think the references in the background check makes total sense,
Hmm.
but giving them these interrogative questions, are those the kind of questions you would recommend an employer ask in an interview?
I think you can learn a lot from somebody. Again, if you are, have the, know what you're looking for. I think you can learn a lot about other people. I think it's interesting.
I think that you can learn if they're a good interviewer or not, or interviewee or not. Um,
Well, and there is a lot of statistics that would support behavioral interview questions over just regular interview questions, with that being the reason of the support. So, for example, just regular forward facing interview questions, you actually don't, somebody that is going to be a good interviewer, there's a lot of science that suggests that they're going to definitely pass those interview questions, but they're going to come forth with some information. The more somebody talks, if they're lying, it's harder for them to collaborate their story. So, there's a lot of science that would suggest that
you gotta
even if
listen.
you're a
You gotta
really
listen to this.
good
You gotta
interviewer,
listen to this book. You gotta listen to this book. I mean, that's the thing is the CIA. They're the people who are supposed to be able to tell if people are lying or not. And the same
but
thing you hear about with
again,
police now with the profiling and the. Anyways,
maybe
look,
so.
you have data, and so I don't know. I think it's just interesting to go back and forth. Let's just come up with a couple. Here's a scenario we've run into at our machinery business. Um, we had a guy. We knew of him because he had been at some other companies that were our customers. He had been at like 3 or 4 different companies. What does that tell you if somebody's been at several different companies? Is that a
How
red
many
flag?
years? Yeah, how many years
I don't know. Say 10
between?
years, 4 companies.
That's not that bad. It could be worse. That's not bad. That's about typical.
4 years, 4 companies.
Yeah, that's not good.
Even if they seem like they just
No,
really have it together.
no.
What advice do you have right now for a company, a machining company in this job market, and they just can't find any good people right now, and they're just flailing around? What do
What are
you
you
what
are you having problems recruiting or retaining? Let's start there.
um well, let's do both scenarios. Let's just do recruiting first. What people
Okay.
tell me is I can't find anybody, even uh, a bad person, an unskilled person that's going to do a bad job and I'm going to pay too much for. I can't even find those people, let alone a really skilled person.
Okay. So if you're having problems with recruiting, a telltale sign of that is going to look like we have 5 brand new positions that are just freshly created. So that's going to be a recruiting problem, right? Because you have brand new positions, no turnover, right? So, you really need to assess that first. Am I having a problem recruiting or am I having a problem retaining?
Well, maybe it's just somebody who is uh, building their business and they need.
Okay. Recruiting. That's good. Okay. So you're building your business, you decide, you know what, I'm going to add some different positions here. So, um, if you really want to be competitive, there are things that you could do, right, to attract talent. But really, you need to understand the needs of your workforce at large. So, what does your workforce look like in your plant? And what needs are being met, as a company? What needs are you meeting? And then, is there anything that you could be doing better? right? So, you really want to roll out, I've said this on Joe's podcast, but you really want to roll out the red carpet for your candidates in your recruiting process. You really want to show them that, you're the better option if they had to pick between five other companies. So whether that's through, you've got the best technology on your floor, whether that's through, we offer flexible shifts. We offer flexibility
Yeah,
with
that's probably a
leave
really
and
attractive thing lately.
absolutely, absolutely. Smaller companies aren't going to have the luxury of being able to really like provide like daycare or anything like that. But, you're starting to see a lot of larger companies providing daycare, that kind of thing. But I mean, even if you're a smaller company though, I feel like you could at least have the capacity and potential to be like, yeah, you know what? Um, uh, you know, Jane's kiddo is sick today and it is what it is, or, Jane's got to like juggle a few things with childcare or whatever. This is a huge thing for me, you know?
Yeah,
So
me too.
that just, I know, right? It's real. They are sick. These kids are sick all the time, Noah.
Oh
I don't know.
God, I'm just discovering that. I mean, he's only seven
Yeah,
months old, but
yeah,
they're just big
yeah.
germs. There's just like a big germ running around.
I mean, yeah, yes. So just having that understanding, compassion, and being like, maybe they won't, we shouldn't like point out our best people,
You're saying
right?
when you're
Let's not do that
explaining
right now.
when you're trying to sell yourself as a good place to work, you're saying list these as some of the benefits.
Hmm.
Yeah. Are these more important than pay?
I mean, pay is great. Pay is still probably, I mean, when people are coming to me and they're saying, I'm looking for a job, it's still predominantly when I ask them why, it's still pay is pretty high up on the list of the reasons. But work-life balance is definitely secondary.
But retaining now and keeping people happy, how important is money and bonuses versus other kinds of things?
I'd say work-life balance is still pretty important to people. And it is just one of those situations where it's like you wish you could get, but like what, can we not have both? You know,
Yeah. Well,
there
I
has
think,
to be, there has to be some flexibility, certainly in manufacturing. That's got to change.
yeah. And some of the people I've interviewed have told me that they've gotten a little bit more flexible on their hours. And I think that's made a huge difference, even allowing people to work part-time or, you know, just want to know a few other things. What's your opinion of unions? Are they are they
I
are they good for if you don't want to opine on something, that's fine. I'm just curious, like you don't really have that many unions down in the South, do they?
there's a few unions. There's a lot more unions here than there were in Kentucky, probably. But I mean,
As far
I
as
don't,
manufacturing?
yeah, I don't really have an opinion on unions, to be honest. I mean, that's kind of
What are people doing?
whatever they want to do.
What are recruiters doing wrong? People also in your field.
Recruiters in my field, what are they doing wrong? They're automating a lot of the process that doesn't need to be automated. So I make it feel like it's
Ah,
automated because there's certain steps that I put in my process that are automated. But when it comes to like, I want to call you and talk to you, I still want to pick up the phone and call you and talk to you. So like that, you can't really replace that, but you can replace like some of this other stuff, right? So you can replace like the like resume document back and forth. You can do that. It's different follow-up emails. Like if it's just kind of meeting a checkpoint in the process, that's fine. But I mean, if somebody's reaching out wants like information, then I mean that's a whole conversation, right? So you need to, figure out what works with automation in the process, and then what does not work with automation in the process. That makes sense. Yeah. I think a lot of recruiters also, I I don't know. They have a hard time with the whole networking aspect, I think. I don't think there is a
Isn't that the whole
good,
point? Isn't that what they do?
I don't, th I think there's like a younger crowd that I was very fortunate to be
You're young.
yeah, well, I was very fortunate though to be trained by, some old school recruiters that were like, no, this is what you do. This is how you cold call. This is how you talk to people. This is how you develop relationships with people. You want to develop your relationships with people. I think recruiters, especially if they're working internally for a company, really don't get that exposure because they're kind of isolated, to that company.
What's the difference between a headhunter and a recruiter? Are they the same?
They're the same. I don't really like that term, so I don't use it.
It's like stewardess versus flight attendant or massage
Yeah.
therapist versus masseuse or okay. You know, we're almost done. I mean, and I just want to skip back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago about if you're an employer and you're looking for employees, how do you put yourself out there? How do you advertise? Through LinkedIn, or through Monster, through going to you?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. What I've told some companies that have reached out to me, because I always offer just some basic tips and advice for them of what they could do to really increase their brand. I mean, this is part of your brand, when you're recruiting, this is part of your brand. But what I've encouraged them to do is I want them to make like video testimonials or video job descriptions. So like utilize your
Video
workforce that you
testimonials
have.
from the employees that are already there,
Yeah,
and
I
then
think so.
put them on LinkedIn or something like that.
Mhm.
Or
Also showcase what technology, if you got technology that you want to show off that you think is going to be kind of cool to the younger folks, your VR headsets and all of that, robotics.
that sounds like a really good tip.
Hmm. Put it out there. Put it on LinkedIn, put it on Facebook, put it on YouTube. What are some other, you can't really do that with like your job boards, right? You can't do that with like Monster Indeed, but I mean, make little TikToks if you want to, different things like that, and definitely on your website.
Yeah. Um,
Google Ads, you could do that with.
AdWords just on online, just putting yourself out there. Then you're saying, or
I think Google Ads, the service, Google Ads.
yeah.
Mhm.
What is something you learned last week that, or maybe just something that you read or you saw that like struck you emotionally or something?
Something that I learned last week.
It could be anything. It could be like, you learned from watching a nature show, or you learned a piece of news, or
Oh gosh. Well, I think we're both fans of Manufacturing Happy Hour. Love that one. Um, always learning some really good stuff there. Always learning from my LinkedIn community too.
okay. So what tidbits have you learned from LinkedIn? You said you hadn't seen any of my repurposed videos, so I guess you hadn't seen that. But
I'm sorry.
no, it's not your fault. It's the algorithm's fault.
Well, I've learned a lot about what is really, the future of work is going to look like. And, I've learned a lot about what we're doing through my own show, with my guest last week on Workforce 4.0 of how we're preparing for the future of work and, what skills are going to be, what skills are really going to be in high demand.
Which
How
one?
are
Well, okay,
those
so tell me what you actually what was something you took away from? What skills are the most in high demand? Anything that surprised you?
um I mean, VR was really kind of what we were talking about on the show,
Really?
which was really cool. Yeah,
How is that
yeah.
important? Like,
It's really more about training than it is on site day to day, if that makes sense. But I mean, just the applications of being able to use, VR for industrial training, because some of the machinery is really big, right? So it just depends on your process, but it's not like, some of the machinery is so big that, you're either in a pulpit up in the air, like if you're in a metal mill, aluminum, steel, whatever.
That's really interesting. So that's going to be playing a big part.
Yeah, but the thing is that there's really no good way to train somebody unless you have them sitting with somebody for like hours, and days and weeks and months and all that. So, if you're utilizing VR and then they crash the mill on VR, then you like start over. You know what I mean? It's like, thank God. Somebody crashes a mill in real life. I don't know if you've been to like,
and then you don't have to worry about lying in an interview with
and then
Ann.
you don't have to worry about lying in an interview. Exactly.
Should I lie or should I not lie? Because if I don't lie, she's going to think that I'm irresponsible. But if I lie, she'll think that I'm a liar.
I mean, I appreciate you not lying, but at the same time, what did you do when you were actually on the job in that situation? I don't know.
Is there anything else you'd like to say to the people of the world before we wrap this up?
No, I really appreciate your time today, Noah. Thank you so
I
much for having me
appreciate your
on.
time. It was
Yeah,
fun. It was fun.
good. I'm glad. No, it's a great conversation. I appreciate it. If you want to touch base with me or get a hold of me in any way, LinkedIn is probably the best platform format to do that. All social handles, A Wyatt Recruits.
And you should check out her show, the live stream.
Absolutely.
Soon to
Yeah,
be a
Workforce
podcast.
4.0. I hope so.
Workforce
Yeah.
4.0 future podcast.
Absolutely.